That's solid. Tom, you ready to roll?
I'm ready to roll, guys. Let's do it.
I got a hard freeze from you the moment I clicked live, which I was
Oh,
excited about.
you leaned back and it looked like you were dancing to our intro song.
Right.
And then nothing happened. And I was like, oh no, is it already going off the rails? Kind of is. So.
Yeah, we're close. All right. What's up, everybody? Live from Brooklyn, New York, David Goss and Tom Bogert here, ready to talk Aaron Rodgers, New York Jets, and why they are the best team in the world. This is SoccerWise, as you all know. I mentioned it on my show yesterday. I'm beginning a week-long odyssey on the way to moving to Miami, Florida. And so this is my first stop about a mile and a half south of where I actually live. It's a slow progress trip. And I'm in my parents' apartment. You are in your parents' basement. So We've really accomplished a lot in life.
Yeah, we start SoccerWise and all of a sudden we're in our parents' basements. So it's all good fun. Goss, I need you to develop a stronger. Am I back?
Yeah.
That's good. Well, I was saying that you need to dial up the Brooklyn accent to 11, like something that was unnatural for you, like by the time you get to Florida, and then just be like, no, dude, this is how I talked all the time, bro.
Yeah. The problem is when I try and do hard New York accents, they become Boston accents, which is like so random. And my Boston accent is terrible.
I love the Boston accent. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. But mine is bad. It's just like I only have one accent. It's just this weird fake accent. And if I go into it, it becomes a weird place. I will say this. Sam Stashko can attest to this because he's a huge fan. The two favorite words that he likes for me to say are Florida and Fort Lauderdale. And he is stoked about me moving down there and having to say those words over and over again. I think it might be the highlight of his life right now. If anyone has any advice, I'm going to be driving down there. Places to stop, things to do, things to snack on, whatever. Let me know. I will be crushing podcasts as well, which I'm very excited about. Mm-hmm. I will probably listen to SoccerWise 5 times on the way down just to review everything that we are doing. We've got a big week of shows. We're going to continue our shows the same. So I did my weekend recap yesterday. It's about an hour of insane ramblings of a crazy person in which I dug into a little bit of the Columbus Crew goalkeeper situation, explained sort of what happened, what went down, and what my understanding of what they could have done, what they chose to do, and how it all netted out. Talked a little Caleb Porter as well. Talked Alex Morgan's retirement in her final match, and of course a bunch of USA, Canada there. Jordan Angeli will be back with me tomorrow for us to dig into NWSL a little bit more. Some big news going on across the league over the last few days and some huge matches coming up this weekend, including KC against Orlando. And then you and me, Tom, will be back on Thursday. I think we are going to do our MLS underrated best 11. So if anyone's out there and you're like, this is a name that has to be on that list, send it to us. Because I already went through and did my first cull through. And I like some of the names, but I'm not in love with the group that I put together, which is annoying because I'm always thinking in my head like, oh, this person's underrated. This person's good. And I lost Tom in the middle of all of that. So I'm going to be working on all of that. So feel free to hit us up and send us anything you have and any names that you recommend. And we'll see if Tom comes back. If not, this will become a second one-person show of the week. Sam Minton, Boston accent, clears New York. Yeah, but I don't know if that's a positive. Like, I know you are a Boston person. I don't know if that's a good thing. And I don't know if that's a accent that people like or it's an accent that's easier to make fun of as you go along. RG Loss, Brad Stuver in the underrated conversation. So this was a tough one. Goalkeeper is a tough one because in theory, pretty much all of them are starters. Like I'm not really going to be talking about a backup goalkeeper unless there's one who should be a starter that doesn't get the opportunity. In the starter conversation, I think Brad Stuver has been in a goalkeeper of the year voting before, and I don't know that he can get into an underrated convo, but it was one of the toughest positions. Tom, you want to join me?
Yeah, I want to join you. So obviously I've missed the last couple minutes because why would internet work? I've done shows from that exact location
On our
times
show.
before. There's nobody else here. Obviously, I'm here dog sitting for my parents, so nobody else is on the Wi-Fi. So it's really frustrating. It's just a great start to the Tuesday. What I don't know if I assume that you haven't, because all I heard was you mentioned Brad Stuver.
Yeah.
What else did you do yesterday, Goss? Did you happen to have a farewell soccer game in New York City?
I did. It was my co-ed semifinals with the potential of a doubleheader into a final because, I don't know, why would you not make the most important game of the season and the worst case scenario? Shout out to All Megan's Friends FC, which is the name of my team. It's also the name of my wife because she started the team, AMFFC. Whose legacy I now am ensured will continue on without me. Went down to the field. We won our semifinal 2-1. I injured my ankle on the second play of the opening game. We then immediately played the final. Two teams that brought 37 subs. We had 2 subs. Soldiered through all of it. Lost the second game 3-1. Tweaked my ankle in the last minute of the game, limped off the field, and now I'm super excited to carry my luggage around for the next 5 days on a bum ankle because today up and down the stairs has been a struggle. I'm going to be living in Miami in a year and a half and be like, yeah, my ankle's still a little, from New York, my last game in New York. Going out in a blaze of glory for sure. That's why you're not playing going into your wedding, right? Because you know that it's the worst moment possible that you're going to get hurt.
Yeah, lower extremities for sure. I also don't trust myself to not play the same way that I play because just my brain just turns off. I go instinctually in the field, which makes me happy because my brain's always going in a million miles an hour. Not usually very smart too, which is the worst part. It's just going all the time, except for when I play soccer. So I wouldn't be thinking about to step into a 50-50. Oh my God, I'm getting married in a week. Like, let me not do this.
Yeah.
So that's one. And I would, what if it's the wrong day that I curse at the wrong person or whatever, right? And then somebody swings. But I think more importantly, because I have, knock on wood, I haven't gotten hurt very much in my career. I broke a nose, got a concussion in high school. I was back in not very long. This was before concussion protocol. Maybe that's why my brain's all insane all the time. But I'm less worried about that. I'm more worried about my wife-to-be having an absolute mental breakdown or a heart attack at the idea of one of those things happening. So me taking a break before my wedding has more to do, I think, with her mental state than my physical state.
What a just martyr that Tom is. Stepping away
I'm going to go play soccer tennis after this.
Yeah. Stepping away from the game he loves for the people around him. What a mensch. It was fun. Shout out to Mike, who I met, who is Joe Lowry's friend, who's a legend, who just comes up to me and is like, do you know Joe Lowry? I was like, hell yeah. It was a frustrating game, I will say, in the final. The goalie on this team is the best goalie in the league by a mile. He played at the TST tournament. I broadcast 2 of his games, and I walked down the field. I was like, this doesn't feel right.
Oh,
and
brutal.
He basically, he played a blinder. Like, I hit the best left-footed volley of my life, and he gets his face in the way on a slot. It's like no goalkeeper in this league is putting their body in the way. He basically just makes saves and then throws it, because it's 7v7 side. He throws it direct to strikers. And it's one. So he had 3 assists in this game.
Hold the phone, God, and he's got a cannon.
Yeah. So shout out to Will for crushing it. And shout out to everyone on my team for grinding through and making it a great last day. I was proud of my squad. I was proud of the way we performed.
Were you walking off the field clapping and crying and 100%. Kissing the badge, get a little walk? I
took the microphone after Alex Morgan style, and I gave a little speech thanking the fans and just talking about the moments we've shared together over the years and in my career. We've got a big show, so let's get into it. We're going to talk USMNT. We're going to talk Canada, of course. And the MLSPA has put out the free agent list in Major League Soccer for next year. So we're going to go through and talk about some of our top options, what we think where we think they'll land, what we think they could be worth, and all of those things. And as I said, we'll do our underrated best 11 next show. So send me those names. RG Lost, don't worry. Brad Stuver is going to get in because of you, and anyone else who has other names, feel free to present them to us, whether it is via text or via tweet, or more importantly, you could do it via Discord. So if you subscribe to our Patreon, you get into the Discord. That's where all the mailbag questions came from yesterday. That's where we're talking about all the games, everything we're watching, chatting through the national team games, all of that. It also gets you our depth charts, which we are going to reference a lot when we get into this, because those depth charts have salary tables. It shows you what teams have spent, what players are making, how many years their contracts are for. So if someone says, oh, João Paulo's a good player, should he end up in Atlanta? What options do they have in central midfield? How long are those people going to be there? You can see that all right there. So it's one of the coolest things that we have, and that's how you get access to it. So make sure to join and hang out, and we're going to get our next happy hour on the schedule as well for us to hang out with everyone one-on-one. We won't do it during the U.S. versus New Zealand match because it's just too high stakes. Like, we can't pull anyone away from being fully focused on the all whites, I believe, is what they go by, and the New Zealand Kiwi national team facing off against the U.S. men's national team. That's going to be 7 p.m. Eastern time tonight at TQL Stadium. It is a comeback match for the U.S. after losing to Canada 2-1. I talked a bit about that game yesterday. It is obviously a low point for this team. Mikey Varis talked this week about intensity and passion and sort of was like, I can't coach it, I can't force it, but it's an issue. Tim Ream and Christian Pulisic touched on it as well. Obviously, the big story around this team, which has now been updated slightly, is Julian Lorenz tweeting today that he believes Mauricio Pochettino will sign officially today with the U.S. men's national team. Tom, I think I'll just make up a date and throw it out there and see if I can nail that one on the head, because that just feels like what everyone's doing at this point.
Yeah, that's kind of my view too. I mean, it just obviously depends on what you're looking like. Jokes aside, of course, but yeah, that's this volume, this level of energy of talking about when Pochettino is going to be announced. It's all I've got for this. Like, I reiterate what I said last week in that, like, it is so frustrating that this wasn't done before this window. And again, if Pochettino came in and like, all it would have really changed his vibes and like getting another camp, I think all of that's important. But it's not even just because that they lost to Canada. If they beat Canada 1-0, kind of who cares, because everything's about to change. There's going to be a new coaching staff.
Yeah.
So it's just really frustrating that this is taking so long. And after Saturday, it's like, I feel even stronger about that. And like, one thing from Saturday, I didn't love Mikey Vars throwing the players under the bus. I think that you do that in the locker room, like, completely good with him absolutely lighting them up in the locker room. But for like interim manager coming to the press conference and being like, yo, like, you guys need to have better intensity, is like real substitute teacher vibes. Like, why didn't you guys fill out that workbook? I really didn't love that, but maybe I saw something out of context. But
I actually do love it, because it's like kind of like a self-immolation to inspire them of like, there's no chance he's coaching this team again on that move. But what he's saying...
But today, he's going to coach them today.
But what he's saying does have to be said, and he's like, all right, I know I'm out the door. I'll take... You know, it's like when you watch Succession. It's when you watch Succession, and the people who are like already retiring are the ones that they always throw under the bus to be like, you just say you're the only one who knew about this, and then you'll be the one that gets in trouble. That's kind of what it felt like, but I get your point for sure. I mean, Tim Ream, I think, stepping up and saying it the way he did, it feels something that was pretty known across the team and wasn't really a secret. He is one of the guys that I said I would not like to see him start again. You know who Tim Ream is. You know what you're going to get. It was poor against Canada. I don't need a bounce back game from Tim Ream, in my view. And Mikey Varis said it's a bit of a balance here of getting guys opportunities, making sure that the next coaching staff is getting to see different people, as well as getting sort of your staples in the team, people that have deserved minutes. So when I went through lineup and people that I thought about, Mark McKenzie was like a big one that stood out to me that I would like to see in place of Tim Ream, just to see him get the opportunity.
Yeah, and I agree with that completely. Like, if you just toss out 11 new players, it doesn't mean anything. All of your data points are completely uncorrelated because it's a lot of the backups or it's a lot of guys who haven't played with each other. You need constants in the team, controls in the team to really get the data points on the other players. Chris Richards started next to Tim Ream. You didn't need both of them. And to your point, I think it's pretty obvious that it should be Chris Richards. Like, moving forward, one of the biggest kind of things that Pochettino and the new staff will have to decide is who is Chris Richards' partner. I feel pretty safe in assuming that Chris Richards is going to be viewed as the best center back, or at least in the medium term. So is it still going to be Ream he turns 37 this fall, or is it going to be Mark McKenzie? Is it going to be Austin Trust? Is it going to be Cameron Carter-Vickers? So I don't really understand why Ream and Richards started a friendly against Canada together under an interim coach. It does not make any sense to me.
Wow. I didn't really think about it in that exact way. Also, didn't realize Tim Ream was 37. Shout out to Tim Ream. No, shout out to Tim Ream because I've got the bum ankle and I can't even move around. So it is impressive. But absolutely. And I think in that balance, like you said, you probably see Joe Scally again. I don't know exactly what you do in goal. That one's not as serious. I don't know if you have any players specifically that you want to bring up, but I can't see a world that Aiden Morris doesn't start this game. Not only was he the most positive player on the field last game, what he's doing at Borough, like, he's earned this spot, he's earned the opportunity, and clearly no one else plays that position.
Yeah, and I don't know if he would, like, because he's obviously a different player than Johnny Cardoso. I understand why Johnny kind of got the nod. I went back and forth when we were talking about it last week about whether I want to see, like, I would love to have seen them both, but it makes sense that they didn't both
Johnny
start.
would have loved to have seen them both, too. He was like, I don't want to be a 6. Get someone else out here.
Yeah. Aiden Morris, I think that's the easy answer for me. Haji Wright, maybe. He's somebody I'm really interested to see how his, I guess, prominence within the hierarchy of the pool evolves, either grows or kind of falls by the wayside again, because he, like him and somebody like Malik Tillman is another guy who, like, I think that they're both very good players, like, full start. Let's full stop. Like, let's just start right there. But they're not, like, a really good center back. Yeah, they could be a better passer or a better ground cover or a better aerial, but, like, a really good center back, any coach would be like, all right, cool, like, we can figure it out, particularly with the national team. Like, Haji Wright's role as, like, a winger, but could be an inside forward, or maybe Pochettino and the staff see him as a 9. And then same thing with Malik Tillman, where he's not quite a 10, but he's not quite a winger, and he's not quite an 8. He's just kind of a little bit positionless, but, like, in the right system, like, these players can be really excellent.
Yeah.
And I'm not entirely sure what that's going to be. And it's unfair to Mikey Varis and this staff to try to figure it out, which is another reason why it would be pretty cool if the full-time staff had just taken over by now. But, I risk was so, like, even at the, like, I just worked myself into, oh, you know what, I would be excited to see that. And then I'm like, well, who cares? Nothing matters. We're all going to, it's all tough. Like,
time is
like,
a flat circle.
Yeah. I was trying to find a different one without going too deep, too nihilistic into, like, we're all going to die one day or whatever. I thought that was going to be a little too strong.
Well, I started the U.S. segment yesterday on the recap show saying this is the low watermark in USMNT history in my time. So we already got there on that one.
Well,
I will say a few things. One, there's never a time I watch Malik Tillman play soccer and don't enjoy, like, watching him or don't enjoy him in the game. I understand
I love that
he could do better or worse, but, like, I never walk away from a game being like, Malik Tillman's the problem, or I don't want to see him on the field. I will say, and obviously this is a ton of projection, if it's Pochettino, based off what we've seen him set up, if you think about that, like, second forward 10 role that Son played so successfully, of course, is the big one you're going to fall on. That's probably Gio Reyna if he's healthy. Gio Reyna's never healthy.
Yeah.
That could be a role that Malik Tillman plays in that spot, where he can attack from a little bit deeper.
He could also be Pulisic.
It could be Pulisic, 100%. But he also might prefer to play out on the wing and decide that he wants to stay there. Or Pochettino might decide that he wants to keep him there. But that's definitely true. Haji Wright, I think the interest with Haji Wright is he's a big body. He could be a finisher on the far post. He can come inside and play with his feet. Like, his versatility, I think, is interesting. And I thought he played on the front foot when he came on the field in the game against Canada. And, like, if you're looking for intensity and people caring and all of that stuff, that's sort of what you're going to get in this one. I think we'll both acknowledge you're not going to walk away from today feeling great, because either they're going to beat New Zealand and you're going to say it's New Zealand, or they're going to lose and it's going to be the worst thing that's ever happened. I'm pretty sure That's what I'm seeing in the Mexican soccer community right now is like
Oof.
that team's at a low. They beat New Zealand 3-0, better than losing to New Zealand, and they don't feel anything coming off of it. You saw the crowds at the Rose Bowl. Like no one wanted to be a part of that game. No one wanted to be around. This is a bigger opportunity, though, for Mexico. They're going to play against Canada in their next match. That match is a little bit later. I think it's an hour and a half later tonight down in Dallas at Jerry World. I don't think Dak Prescott's going to play in this one, but he will potentially have a new contract when he gets to the stadium for this match. The Canadian men's national team is a big week. They knocked off the U.S. 2-1, and we talked about Mikey Varis's comments about his team. Tom, it's the polar opposite right now for Jesse Marsch.
Yeah. After the game against the United States, I'm very happy for Jesse. I would be taking a victory lap if I was him. I don't care if it was a friendly. I don't care if it was, again, all of the different things that we've been critical about, just the state of the team right now without the full-time head coach taking over before the window, all that stuff. Like, Jesse Marsch deserves a victory lap after this game. But, I understand that he's not going to say, oh, yeah, I'd rather be coaching the United States. But, coming out and being like, yeah, no, obviously, I want to be with Canada. And it's just it felt weird that he kind of had to say it. And a year ago, that's obviously not the case. So, I just think that he's leaving out some truths, some feelings, some analysis. I do respect the hell out of that. He's still doing the CBS podcast. He made a goal prediction, the scoreline prediction in that game. He got it right. It's incredible. So I respect that, how head on he takes all this. And one of the quotes, I want more people to kind of realize this when it's oh, why do you keep talking about this? Why do you keep talking about this? It's he's yeah, I answer the questions that you guys ask me. It's not I'm coming in here and bringing it up. And I think that that's mostly true because I do think that there are varying degrees to how you can answer these questions depending on how much you want to talk about it.
And the media spaces also, you can choose to go into a podcast that you're optionally choosing to go on to be asking questions.
Yep. So I don't know. Again, I'm kind of fence sitting right now in that I'm making jokes a little bit about Jesse Marsch, but I think the overarching feeling is he deserves every single step of this victory lap.
Yep. Yeah. If you felt like you got spurned, you take this other job.
And he did.
And I think there were some question marks when he took it of why would you even do this? Right? There was very few question marks for Canada of why would you pick him? It was you've been we've heard you connected to EPL jobs in Bundesliga and now you're going to coach Canada. And so for him to come back 3 months later and be sorry, I made a Copa America semifinal and then I beat the US. If they beat Mexico, they are.
They should.
And if they do, they are the best World Cup host country going into 2026.
Yeah, and I would agree with that right now on Tuesday, September 10th, 2024.
That's the only time that matters. That's the only date that matters.
So, I was about to so with Jesse Marsch, when you said kind of when he was first connected, why there was Leicester, there's all this. So kind of the backstory here, and I've been careful about how much Mayo said why the hatred is burning so bright. When he was first connected with the Canadian national team job, I texted somebody who would have a pretty good idea of Jesse, his situation, his general contract demands, and whether or not Canada would be able to reach it. I was they're not going to be able to afford him, right? There's kind of no way. And the source that texted me back was pretty much yeah, but Jesse's hatred for U.S. soccer might know no bounds, and that was a mostly serious response.
I'll do it for free. Let me at him.
Honestly, that was a motivation factor for him to take this. He had agreed to take the Leicester City job, and then he pulled out because he thought I don't know how many details I can really get into here, but he was very close to the Leicester job. I'll just blanket it there and leave out the exact details about what is true and what isn't. But I'll tell you, in his head, he's really, really angry at U.S. soccer about how all of that happened. And again, it's all of this more fuel to say that he deserves every moment of this victory lap. Again, whether you love him, whether you hate him, whether you want him to talk less, whether you all of it, whatever it is, doesn't matter. This dude's the winner, and he gets to do whatever the hell he wants right now.
For Mexico, they've gone the creative route. They've hired Javier Aguirre for the 37th time in the last 25 years to coach their national team. It is absolutely absurd. They beat New Zealand 3-0 in the last game. I'll say a few things in this one that I'm watching for. Alistair Johnson, we know, injured. Sam Adekugbe brought in to replace him. Richie Larea probably gets to start at right back. We are either going to see Julian Quinones at left mid for Mexico, who is the best player in a Mexican jersey right now, or we're going to see Sofia Huerta. Never mind. Chino Huerta. Sofia Huerta plays in NWSL. At that left midfield spot, that is going to be, I think, the battle of the entire day. You've got a player in Richie Larea who is going to start a fight at some point. He is going to try and get forward a little bit. Quinones is like a one-man attack. So if that's the battle, that's something to watch out for and to see how Canada handles it. How does Moise Bombito give help, but also be able to be positionally sound himself? When can Canada get up and press? Like, this is a Mexico team that is going to have a better central midfield than the U.S. had, is probably going to be more committed to possessing the ball, which gives you chances to press, but also means if you get broken, there are more options to attack. So I think this is a really good test for Canada. The other thing I would watch for is whether it's Chouanier and Eustachio again, or someone else gets the start in central midfield, Osorio. I talked about Nico Seeger last time. I would be surprised if he didn't play against the U.S. and then gets a start against Mexico. But this Mexican midfield, they will make runs out of midfield and play direct in ways the U.S. didn't, except for the one time Aiden Morris did, which caused the goal. So Chouanier and Eustachio are going to have to track the Romos of the world, the Pinedas, all of these types of guys, Charlie Rodriguez, Cordova, whoever it is, they've got 5 or 6 options in there. They're going to have to track them out of midfield. They're going to have to try and win 50-50 battles against them. That's not what either of those players are good at. This is the test. But, like, this is the question of, I love Chouanier, but if Eustachio is a mainstay in the team, is that midfield tough enough against good opponents? And if not, then what are the next options? Ismail Kone unavailable because he got injured with Marseille in that one. So that match, 9 p.m. tonight, right off the back of the U.S.-New Zealand game. Obviously, these 3 national teams don't have World Cup qualifying. Copa America's over, so this is probably what it's going to look like. Is they are probably going to optionally play each other. We know the U.S. and Mexico have already agreed to play in Mexico. And then there's probably going to be 1 or 2 national teams that pop into the area and rotate and play everyone.
New Zealand.
And this time it's New Zealand. I wouldn't be shocked if you see a couple African nations. I wouldn't be shocked if you see Asian nations, especially if some big ones get knocked out early in World Cup qualifying. You'd expect me, whenever they can, to get a UEFA team to come. CONMEBOL is kind of going to be impossible because they play every single match day across, because their World Cup qualifying is 500 years long. And we'll talk about some of these MLS players. Actually, let's start there. For MLS players playing in international, we talked last week about the ones we really want to see. We talked about Martin Paz for a while, the Indonesian legend. He had never played a minute, and he was already one of the most popular players in the world because of the Indonesian fan base. He makes his debut. They play at Saudi Arabia, which is one of the giants of the region. It's also like a 97-hour trip to get from Indonesia to Saudi Arabia. He wins man of the match. They tie 1-1, and he concedes a penalty himself, which if you've watched it, he's trying to play out of the back. He doesn't have an option. He takes a long touch. It gets taken away, and he just slides in and wipes this guy out. And then he proceeds to save the penalty kick in like the 83rd minute. Martin Paz is a legend, and I was stoked to see all of this go down.
Unreal. Like, this has been so much fun and so cool. Like, just being on social media and just seeing, like, oh my God, Martin Paz is starting. Like, that's awesome. Here we go. It's happening. And then it's like a video comes out. He, FC Dallas puts up the highlight that he saves the penalty. And it's, within 3 minutes, it's got like 1,000 retweets. Like, it's just, and just all of the fans that like love him. Like, what a debut. He won man of the match. How cool is this? This is incredible. Like, I just can't believe all this is real.
Every MLS social media admin right now is just sending transfer market pages of Indonesian players to their GMs being like, oh, this guy's available. Should we bring in a backup left back and see if we can change some stuff up? So Martin Paz, not the only big performance. Right now, like at this exact second, Mo Farsi, starting for Algeria in AFCON qualifying, had an assist in like the most Columbus Crew way. He like ends up being the center forward, plays like a back heel facing away from goal, right inside the 6, whatever. So that's a really cool moment for him. Esmir Baraktarovic gets on the field against the Netherlands.
Awesome.
He got an assist to Edin Dzeko, which you have to think, if you're someone who your dream is to play for the Bosnia and Herzegovina national team, that is like the all-time moment.
Incredible. And it was a delightful assist. What I really, really like about Esmir is that like he's just a different type of player than most kind of in the pool. Like not to always use the Clint Dempsey, the quote about Clint Dempsey, just like he tries shit, but like he's got this creativity and this like unpredictability that again it doesn't always come off, but like in his US national team debut, he'd make somebody on his first touch, his second touch, like, and then he gets into this game, he dribbles somebody and plays an ambitious, incredible ball over the top to Edin Dzeko, who scores. Like he's got that capability. Whether or not he'll become consistent enough to be like, say when he's 25, 26, and we're like, damn, like the United States should have just called him into the Olympic team and he would have been in the pool. Or if it's just going to be like, this is a really cool story of a guy who maybe wasn't going to be quite good enough to be regular with the U.S. national team. And look at how awesome it is for Bosnia. It can be a win-win, but I'm rooting for the kid because he's just fun as hell. And again, you see that with the New England Revolution. The fact that he does that on his senior Bosnia debut, like, I can't imagine he's had much time with any of these players. And his coaching staff, like, that's awesome. And it's just, like, it can't be understated.
I was going to correct you because you started by saying this is why I like him in the pool, and it's like, well, he's not in the pool anymore. He's a Bosnian player. He's got nothing to do.
What I'm saying is that like he was American Bosnian dual national. Yes. And in the American pool, we don't have that many wingers. Like, we have better wingers, obviously. Right. Pulisic, Weah, Gio Reyna, if he's playing on the wing. But, like, his exact profile is like a style that this pool doesn't have because he's unique in terms of players that are being produced through the American soccer system.
Yes, absolutely agree with that. Let's close out with who else but Luis Suarez. He got his testimonial send-off match. I was like, it's a competitive game. He got the start, which, in fairness, he's in the push for the Golden Boot in his club team. He is Luis Suarez. It was at the Centenario in Montevideo. An epic moment, all of this different celebration. A bunch of legends came. They were a part of it. His family obviously was there as well. It ended up being a 0-0 draw for Uruguay because they were stonewalled by the MLS midfield of Diego Gomez and Andres Cubas for the Paraguayan national team in the Aguayan derby or whatever you want to call it. By the way, I got to send you.
I hate you.
I know. Gustavo Alfaro, who's now coach of Paraguay, he coached Costa Rica in the last cycle. He's got this like long quote about how they're going to play Brazil today, where he's like, I can't promise we'll win, but I can promise every fan who comes into the stadium sees a Paraguayan player giving their life for the ball. And you're like, all right, dude, relax. Like, you just took this job. Do not act like this is your end-all, be-all and like the most important moment in your life. But it was, it got me hyped up. It was ready to go. It was very Joe Mazzulla of him to throw it in there for that.
We could do the rest of the show just reading off Joe Mazzulla
quotes. But we're not. Instead, we're going to talk Columbus Crew goalkeeper situation. So, if you haven't listened, you can go to the weekend recap. I dug into this for like 15 minutes. I went in and I explained what happened to Columbus, that they ended up in this situation, how they chose to handle it. I went through the 3 or 4 options of what they could have done, and then the reality, which was they chose to not bring a backup goalkeeper to make a point to Major League Soccer. Abraham Romero got called for a red card, one that I still think is controversial, but no one wants to talk to me about that. I've tried. And they ended up with Sean Zawadzki in goal for over a half in this game. Tom, is there anything you want to talk about with this?
No, and it's funny that like I think by Sunday morning I was kind of over the discourse. I don't understand why this has been such a flashpoint of like I think particularly out of Seattle.
It's a flashpoint. Wait. It's a flashpoint because Wilfred Nancy made it a flashpoint.
Yeah,
right?
Well,
if it had happened, and after the game he had been like, he got screwed by the schedule, that would have been 20 minutes.
Yeah. So poor choice of words for me. It felt like Seattle folks are insisting it has to be Columbus's fault because if it's not, then their 3 points doesn't count I don't understand. Like, Albert Rusnak, his goal bonuses, they're all coming. I would be nothing but happy if I'm Seattle. Like, you caught the Columbus Crew starting their fourth string goalkeeper without Cucho, without Farsi, without Steven Moreira. No matter what else happened, like, there is not a better time to play the Columbus Crew than in an international break like this, particularly where Seattle were only missing 2 players to international duty. They were missing a few others to injury. But, like, if this game was played this weekend, Columbus would have everybody back. Right. And it would be a much more difficult task, and it would be much less likely that they picked up 3 points. So I didn't understand why the insistence out of the Pacific Northwest for it to be, no, they screwed up. No, I don't care. It's not the league's fault. It's their fault. It was all that's just like, no, man. Like, no one's taking the points away. Nobody's taking the goals away. Like, we're all good, man. Like, the Columbus isn't giving you guys any crap. It's a league thing. It's a PA thing. It's all this.
As Jordan Moore said, we forced that red card.
And I forced it. Jordan Moore I forced it.
By turning your head and running past the ball that you had no chance to get on the end of. But yes, fair.
So a couple of things for me. Like, I disagree with they chose not to make a point. Like, yes, partly to make a point, but also, like, Wilfred Unson is like, yeah, like, we could have signed a 5th string goalkeeper to MLS contract, and then what? Like, do it for 3 months and then release him? Like, it's not the right time. Like, he even said, he's like, I signed my first contract at 18. My career was over at 21. Maybe I signed too early. Like, maybe I wasn't good enough, but, like, also maybe, like, who knows, right? Like, and I think his developmental record is really strong. So I'm just going to defer to whatever the hell Wilfred Nancy says here. And, like, if they had the call, you'll never convince me that the spirit of this story is anything but this is extraordinarily stupid that the Columbus Crew couldn't have had a second goalkeeper on the bench from their, like, that they had to either go sign a free agent or sign another academy kid to a second team contract and then call that person up. All of that is insanely dumb to me. Good.
No, I was going to say, in that light, I didn't say this specifically yesterday. A lot of what I've gotten, and I don't know the conversation you've had from people in other MLS front offices and stuff, is like, well, they're the rules, and you knew the rules, and you were told the rules. So, like, yeah, it is what it is, but follow it. I will say 2 things. One term I didn't mention yesterday was there used to be a pool goalkeeper in Major League Soccer before teams owned 2 teams, because you should have a backup goalkeeper. And if you were stuck, you should have a backup goalkeeper. Whatever the application process was for that, which was like the league assessing and saying, are these players really hurt? Are these players really unavailable? Should be the same process to allow the other term I should have used yesterday, which is a common sense opportunity to say, okay, you can get an extra call-up. Like, it doesn't have to be rocket science. Yeah. Sometimes 2 people who are adults can end up in a conversation. We've never been in this experience, but I'm sure it happens sometimes. And say, like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, we'll just do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, like, the idea of a maximum amount of call-ups, like, while I think that this is generally dumb, like, the spirit of this from the MLS Players Association is to protect against cheap teams who are going to call up a second-team player 15 times during a season and not give them a first-team contract. I completely agree with that. Again, common sense, the Crew have been bringing players from their second team. They have the development, like, and this is a special circumstance where their third goalkeeper's hurt and their top 2 goalkeepers are on international duty. How many other teams have 2 goalkeepers on international duty? None? Yeah. Maybe, right? Like, so this is, all of that is to say that, like, there really should have been an exemption. The Red Bulls got to call up their second team left back 7 times this year because 3 of them came as an Olympic exemption, except for the fact that the Olympic exemption thing I don't believe was ever announced by MLS. I just saw it in a couple press releases by Philly. The friendly, why?
The Aston Villa thing is bizarre. That makes I don't know who's doing that.
Schulte was at the Olympics at that time. Why wasn't that an Olympic? I don't, like, all this is just so dumb. And, like, again, I'm such a hypocrite. I started this by saying no, I don't have anything to say, and I'm just screaming at you for 8 minutes. The last thing I want to say is, what is so frustrating to me in general? So the Columbus Crew's 4th string goalkeeper gets sent off. It's 0-0 against Seattle in the 45th minute. If they sub in their 5th string goalkeeper, without Cucho, Moreira, all the other players are missing, they're down to 10 men, they probably lose. This was all completely avoidable. Like, nothing would have changed. Maybe Rusnak would have gotten 2 less goals or 1 less goal or whatever, right? Like, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume with a 5th string goalkeeper losing without several of your best players that they were going to lose if they were down to 10 men for 45 minutes. So, like, all of this was avoidable. And, like, I lose, like, it's frustrating to just have these conversations where it's like, all right, man, like, well, nothing's going to change. This is all stupid. Like, and here I am, like, being a hypocrite and just continuing to scream about it because clearly, like, I care.
Are you telling me that you think being down a man and having your fifth string goalkeeper in goal against Seattle, it's impossible to win? Because impossible is an opinion, Tom. And Wilfred Nance will tell you that. That sounds like he's got them right where he wants them. If that had been the situation, that had happened. I spent 2 hours researching this, talking to people, figuring stuff out yesterday, and I spent like 15 minutes talking about it. I will say it's fun, it's funny, it's bizarre. I don't know that I finished by saying everyone looks bad because I don't think anyone is right, which is a weird way to go through a situation to try and figure out like, oh, who do I agree with? I walked away being like, I don't agree with anyone, and this whole thing is chaos. So that's where we landed on the Columbus goalkeeper situation. Tom, got more.
One less. So I was on CBS, asked me to come on and talk about this, and I saw a comment on like they put up the video, and the video starts with Wilfred Nance talking, and then it ends with like with me in it, and somebody commented something to the effect of what the hell is going on with the facial manscaping, and I don't know if he was talking about Wilfred Nance or me. So apparently, in the literal sense, that guy thought nobody looked good either. So that just had to point that out there.
And now everyone knows that if they jump into the comment section, Tom will read it and he will care. Upper 90 Club in the chat says, full disclosure, I still 100% thought the Crew would win with 10-man and Zawadzki in keeper. That's what Nance has done to us, which is hilarious. And I respect the hell out of that. And yeah, they didn't. Spoilers. Sean Zawadzki, probably, by the way, the one Crew player, I think, that we're allowed to put in the underrated conversation that we're going to have on Thursday. Because the rest of them, it's like, well, I mean, they win 1 million trophies, and we celebrate every player every single game that they play in, and it's really tough to find one with that. Do you want to talk about Caleb Porter? I did a long segment about this yesterday as well. Do you got juice for it?
It's not a good podcast segment because I just want to sit here and laugh with you about what that was in elite, iconic, historical press conference, and I commend him. I appreciate the hell out of him instead of like doing the, if I speak, I'm in big trouble. I can't speak, I'll get fined. Or saying something, beating around the bush of trying to be clever. He goes, no, the referee was a coward. The referee has no balls. I was like, oh my God, like in for a penny, in for a pound. And I respect the hell out of it from Caleb Porter. I'm looking forward to the exact wording on the fines that he and Wilfred Nance are going to get when it's announced by MLS. Yo, do you think he's going to get suspended for that? Because, like, I know he didn't threaten death on this guy, like Vanny Sartini, but Vanny got 5 games for that and everything else that he did, the fake blowjob thing that he did on the field to the referee after that game. So whatever it was for the comments and for the on-field antics and the red card, he got 5 games. Like, there's a possibility Caleb Porter's going to get a game for saying the referee has no balls and is a coward.
There is a possibility. I also wonder, like, Caleb Porter probably has an idea of like how much you get fined for this thing. He obviously knows his own income. Like, what is the percentage of my income I'm willing to give up to ether someone? Because it's
1,000%.
Probably pretty high.
1,000%. And like that's part of the reason why I respected this so much. And first and foremost, we got to be married to the content. Phenomenal content. Well done. Really great execution by Caleb Porter. I don't think he's getting enough credit for that as well. And also, it feels pretty relatable for us. And, that's also why I appreciate it.
Yeah, I yelled at my referee like 37 times last night because he didn't give us a penalty when he should have. And then he goes, what do you want from me? And I'm like, a penalty. Exactly what I just said is not a secret. So I get it.
Being very direct with you.
I did say at the end of it, though, this was not a game where the referee robbed this team. I didn't think it was a penalty. What he was asking for on the VAR play, the Luca Langoni thing, like, it's a clock. He specifically didn't get off the field in time. That's the rule. And then they conceded a goal. This was not a game in which they dominated and deserved to win, and they got robbed. This was a game that was kind of 50-50 at home against the St. Louis team that has no shot at the playoffs. That's kind of tough, but I get it from Caleb Porter there. Let's dig into a story that you're reporting on right now before we get into our MLS top free agents. Avander, someone that we celebrated in our MLS superstar tiers. He, I think, is someone that I talked about elevating from the tier we put him in, which I think was tier B, maybe C. into the top. Now we don't even remember. That's how committed we are to the tiers.
Star. I think we had him in star, not superstar.
Got it. And elevating into the next level because he's leveled up and he's been phenomenal. Portland hasn't been as good around him, which was part of it, but he is like worth the money that you pay for, price of admission type player. And now it sounds like his time in Portland could potentially end a little bit earlier than we expected.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, the short answer to that right now is no, because so the news is a Qatari club submitted a bid for Avander that was rejected out of hand because the bid was like $9 million, which is just under what they paid for him, which is really hilarious that was the opening bid. But sources believe that they would have went up to 16 million or whatever. Like that wasn't going to be the final bid, but the Portland obviously with no ability to replace their best player, they weren't going to do this. And like even if they could replace him, like if this happened 8 weeks ago, I don't think that they would be going out of their way to try to get this done. It comes in a backdrop that they're in contract talks right now with Avander. What I was told is that no agreement is imminent. I was also told that there's an offer on the table from Portland that is in the region of what Denny Bouanga is making, and Denny Bouanga is like the 9th highest paid player in MLS before the summer transfer window, so that could change. But give or take, would be one of the 10 to 15 highest paid players in the league. Like there's been some back and forth between Avander's camp and the club about just the standard stuff, and so it's not just like a contract and a money thing. It's just been like. When he was signed, like Gavin Wilkinson was leading that process to start, and then Gavin Wilkinson was let go by the Timbers, or mutually parted ways, wherever the official phrasing was. And then Ned Grabavoy, who was involved obviously as well, but then he took over in the big chair and kind of finished the deal. So, there was a couple promises that came from one camp to the other, whatever, right? Like so, like that's been part of it. Avander didn't show up to training on Saturday, throughout kind of this saga, and they were off Sunday and Monday. They're training today. I haven't asked or gotten any updates if he showed up to training or not. Because if he's not there again today, this might become a thing. I will say sources believe that this will all kind of get resolved and, it's part and parcel of the game and stuff. But like, at least a Qatari club put a little pressure on Portland with the bid, and we'll see if a new contract can get over the line at some point soon. I think it makes too much sense on both sides for it to not happen, but we'll see.
It is an interesting one because everything we just said, the attack's not the problem for Portland, and they've invested some money in that attack where you could tell me they played 2 games without Avander and like they're okay. Santi Moreno, Anthony, Jonathan Rodriguez, Felipe Moore, like Eric Williamson can play in that 10 role if they need to. They can bring Predis into the team. There's options in there. They're obviously a much better team with him in there. They could survive. But this is sort of one of the things where you look at a player and you're like, you went from Brazil to Denmark to Portland. It's an odd path that's sort of following these contracts. And like, then you can't really turn around and be like, why would he want to leave? It's like, well, this was kind of the pathway that he's taken so far, and this is how he's ended up there. I don't think he's not passionate about the game. I don't think he doesn't care about the club. But this has sort of been the way his career has been laid out for him. And it seems like the potential that it could continue that way. And you've got to be prepared and you've got to be ready for that next move if you're stuck in a situation like that, where that's the player that you're relying on the way Portland is. But I hope that we get to watch Avander play soccer some more in this league. Because I'm probably not going to stream a ton of Qatari games next year just because of, like some of my favorite teams have moved around and just, it just feels more corporate now than it used to.
You're not watching Gabby Pereira in the Qatari Stars League?
No, I actually didn't even really know he was there. Is Kaku there? I think he won he won the Asian Champions League, and I think he plays in Qatar. But also, clearly, I don't care that much, and I do not know. Last piece here before we move on to our free agents. Shout out to Nick Markanich for tying the record for the USL goal scoring in one season. I believe on 25 goals for the Charleston Battery. They've still got 5 games left. He doesn't technically start at the center forward position. So really impressive for him. I have said this 5 million times. I will say it 5 million more. Ben Pierman, the coach of this Charleston team, has turned player after player into a success story. They flip those players, and the next players who come in break the records of the previous players and continue to get better and better. I don't understand how he's not on the top of the list for an MLS club if they're looking for a coach coming out of this season, especially a non-huge market club that's like, oh, we need to use our resources to develop players and to get more out of the sum of the parts than what we have. He would be on the top of my list. And it will be interesting to see how that plays out. And we'll keep talking about all of that as we go along, unless you want to talk about it right now, Tom.
I don't.
Oh, yeah, I thought you threw a hand up. I couldn't tell.
No, that's fair. That's on me. It's on me. Put my hands up.
Let's get into our top free agents. So the MLS Players Association published just an hour or so ago the free agent list for the 2025 season, this offseason coming up, that will be available in Major League Soccer. This list puts out every player who could be available. It says the ones that are coming to the end of their contracts, out of contract, and then the ones that have an option that could or could not be picked up. A reminder, there are no player options in Major League Soccer right now. No player has one. So those are all team options, and a lot of them are going to get picked up. I'll give you this. So the eligible players for free agency now are at least 24 years old and have 5 years of Major League Soccer service. Last year, the timeline for this was MLS Cup was on December 9th. Option deadlines were due between December 1st for teams that were already eliminated to December 10th for the MLS Cup winner. And then the complete list was released on December 13th, 4 days after MLS Cup, with both the out-of-contract players and the players whose options were declined. This year, MLS Cup's on December 7th. So the assumption there is by December 11th, we would know the full list of players that are available based off those options. But this list of players that we have right here are players who are 100% going to be available as free agents going forward. There are some interesting names on this list. There are some really big names on this list. There are some club legends that it would be shocking to see them move if they chose to. There are also some interesting younger players because 24 years old as the threshold, but with guys coming in now as homegrowns, players hit free agency at 24 if their contracts are set up that way for a lot of these young players and make moves and can be like staple players that you can bring in and set things up. Tom, I put like 20 names down and I have moved towards 5 or 6. Do you want to go 1-1 or do you want to just let rip?
I want you to do your top 5 first. I feel like I've led some of these. So I don't want to stay in the jury pool here. I want you to give your top 5 and then we'll go.
So my top 5 are players that I think are interesting, players that I think will move, and that's part of it because there are other players that are better, and then players that I think could have a really good future in a different spot. So my 5 on this list are Jackson
From 5
Ewell.
to 1 or 1 to 5?
I don't know. I'm not doing it that way. Probably 5-1. Jackson Ewell, Jesus Murillo, Aaron Long, Russell Canals, and Ryan Raposo. Those are all players that I wouldn't be shocked if they were in a different jersey next year, and I think they could be a good pickup for the team that picks them up.
Your top 5 doesn't have João Paulo or Albert Rusnak?
I find, though, so those are interesting ones, and I think they're worth it. They are in the doc you are looking at that I made. They are in that list, and they are available.
I have my own doc.
Wow, big doc energy today. I'm not going to lie. I'd be surprised if, especially João Paulo, ended up on a different Major League Soccer team.
Yeah, and I agree. I guess that you're looking more into like again, like you've mentioned something about club players, like Diego Chara is out of contract. Like, I can't possibly imagine he's going to be somebody.
Maxi Morales is one.
Yeah, like those are 2 that like not even considering. João Paulo, like I think it's more likely that he stays. I don't think that it's impossible that he leaves. And
Interesting.
Again, obviously with Rusnak, I think that's more likely as well too, depending on where Seattle goes in terms of discretionary spend. Is Craig Weibel in that front office going to get money for transfer fees to bring in new players or not? Because if not, then they might be like, screw it, like sure Rusnak will give you another DP deal or not, whatever, right? Like those are going to be the conversations. But like I think that it's absolutely realistic that either of those players depart the club. So for me, like I think that they are both absolutely top 5 in this list.
So Rusnak is currently on $2.1 million is what's reported as a designated player. I would be surprised if he was brought back on a DP spot if they can get money to spend because He has not really performed at a DP level. It's probably not his best role. I put down for a lot of these players reference points for us of other contracts, similar quality of players. I would argue actually most of the players in this list are better than Albert Rusnak, but Darlington Nagbe's at $1.4 million. Robin Ludd's at 1.5, and then Martin Ojeda, which is just the more recent signing. So I thought fit in here is at about 900,000. So the assumption here is Rusnak's, if he's not going to take a DP deal, will want a max TAM deal and will want to be right on the line and right on that threshold. Seattle could choose to make that move. If not, Rusnak could probably get that deal somewhere else in Major League Soccer if he wants to.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like, so I think that the comps that you put, I think that that's super good. That's super valuable. That's like what teams, like that's what teams and agents are doing right now. But like, just because of the nature of free agency, you got to, pay a premium if you want to get a guy. And with the open market here, that benefits the players. Like, I'd be surprised if it's not max TAM or something close to that, or hell, like, it doesn't apply for like somebody like San Jose right now, but like wouldn't that be a team just in general that would be like, oh, if we could get this free agent DP, like Seattle did, like Seattle signed him as a DP free agent from Real Salt Lake. A team like Colorado, again, like they have, like they're situated up top, they don't have any DP spots anyway, up top in attacking midfield, they don't have any DP spots anyway, but like teams like this that aren't going to go out and spend a $7 million transfer fee to sign a new, like you could do much worse than Albert Rusnak. Like, I would be maybe I'd be surprised if he does get a DP deal in free agency, but I also don't think that's off the table. So and before we extend further, I'll give my top 5 and the valuations are. Oh, go ahead.
Can I just say one quick thing? So what's funny is there is a team that I think could make that Albert Rusnak move similar to what Seattle did, and it would be RSL. Like if RSL said to themselves, we lost Barajas, we don't know what's going to happen with Luna, like this keeps us at the level we're at. It's obviously a whole new ownership group. It's a whole different situation, but like that's not a ridiculous one. The other one that's interesting to me with him is Houston. Because like Houston won't have the DP
he'd fit there really well.
And that's another one where you're like, how many minutes are we getting from Achi next year? Can you take the Latif money? Can you find some other money somewhere else? If Sebas Ferreira's off the books, that's some money there. And that's, again, a team, because a reminder with these free agents, you don't have to pay the transfer fee. So, like, Houston might be willing to pay someone else $2 million on contract, but they've got to throw the transfer fee in there. That takes you over that number, and Albert Rusnak might be a little bit cheaper.
I kind of low-key love that Houston fit. So yeah, for me, my top 5 would be 5 Jackson Ewell. I think he's a really good player. What did you have? He's at like what 900,000 or something right now. Yes. So he won't be cheap. But like good players cost money. 4 Aaron Long. I went back and forth about where to slot him on this. I still think that he'd be a top 5 free agent. Not quite the same level as when he left the Red Bulls for LAFC when he was much closer to his Defender of the Year campaign. And like he's going to be in the mix again this year. 3 João Paulo for me. It depends on the system, but like, God, he's such an incredibly good player. And I hope that he doesn't leave the league if he leaves Seattle. I think first and foremost, it'd be great for him to stay in Seattle, but if he doesn't, like, there should be a robust market for him. 2, Albert Rusnak for me, for all the reasons, like, I think he's a really good player, but like, if he ends up as a DP, I wouldn't love that if I was the team signing him. But again, very good player. And number 1 for me is Jesus Murillo. Like, I just think he's one of the best center backs in the league, and he's at crazy 500,000 right now. Yeah. And there are caps of what you can pay a free agent. Yeah. So like the raise, what is it, 125% or whatever? Like the most a non-LAFC team can pay him is going to be less than $1 million, which is going to be one of the best values in this league. I think much more likely he re-signs in LAFC for more, but like LAFC have proven that like we'll let a player go if hey, we have a number where we value you at, and it's just business, it's not personal. If you want more, we won't stand in your way to go get more. They let Chicho Arango go for a transfer fee. Latif Blessing, Mahalo Poku, all of those started with contract disputes. Denny Bouanga, same thing. They ended up paying Denny Bouanga, obviously, but like they're pretty rigid on this is where we value at. We cannot compromise that because the salary cap is a fixed number, or we only have X amount of dollars under the salary cap to do this. So I think there's a possibility that he could leave, but like I'd still be surprised because of how good he is and how excellent he's been in this LAFC team.
What I will be interested to watch with the LAFC center back situations is what they learn from Walker Zimmerman. Because there felt like a big energy out of the Walker Zimmerman trade where he was defender of the year in their expansion year, and then they traded him for, at the time, a record fee to Nashville, that center backs only have X value in our salary cap. And we're not going to value any center back. It had nothing to do with Walker Zimmerman above that. It took them a while to bounce back from that. It took them a while to stabilize that position again. They took a step back because of that. I am curious to see if they have changed their thinking here, or if they say to themselves, we're not going to spend, to bring both these guys back, we're not going to spend $2.5 million at the center back position.
And then there's a third. Ilie Sanchez is out of contract. And it's funny, like, it's poetic that you're bringing this up. So they got a little too cute. And I think that I know that they recognize that, because the year that they missed the playoffs, that was when they're like, oh, we can trade Walker Zimmerman and a couple of these other, like, MLS veterans that, like, okay, no, we don't want to overvalue them and overpay them. And then
they lost the Jordan Harveys of the world, the Benny Phil.
Yeah, we can just go sign somebody from South America, and like, our scouting is so good, our deal making is so good, like everything else. And like, I don't think that they were totally wrong, but they went too far in one direction. And then next offseason, in came Ilie Sanchez, in came Aaron Long, in came Ryan Hollingshead, in came Franco Escobar. They signed like 6 dudes with a collective like 500 MLS games or something like that. So I don't think that they'll make that same mistake again. But again, between Ilie, Aaron Long, and Jesus Murillo, can you bring all 3 of those back?
Yeah,
I'm not entirely sure. And like, given LAFC's history in being comfortable and confident in like, we're not going to overpay you just to keep it the same, that like, I could see one of those players leaving. Like, again, it's too early to kind of judge, to figure out what's going to happen. But like, it's not out of the realm of possibility, to say the very least. So anything on that?
So one of the things that's tough for these players, if they choose to stay in MLS, is then the market has to exist. And like, as good as Ilie Sanchez has been, he is making $1.2 million right now.
Yeah.
At his age, and with the way he needs the team to be fit around him, because you saw the lack of success at the end of his time at SKC. I don't know that anyone else is giving him a huge contract.
SKC let him go because they thought he was cooked 3 years ago.
But he looked cooked because the game was too open and he was chasing and it was a mess, and they didn't control possession enough in the way he needed to for him to look good. That is not the type of player that a team, let's just talk about the teams already, like currently in Major League Soccer, on the bottom half of the table can say, oh, no, this guy will solve all our problems.
Yeah, no, that's true.
You cannot walk in the door as Chicago Fire and say, oh, if we bring him in, that will clean up all the gaps for us. And if that's the case, I think LAFC comes back to the table and say, listen, if your market's here, we're happy to pay that. If you don't want to move, and I think Aaron Long and Ilie are going to be the 2 in this convo, where Aaron Long, he's already at that max number. I'd be surprised if someone comes and meets that again. He will probably say to himself, I live in LA. I play for LAFC. This is pretty fun. If I'm going to get $900K from here or in Montreal or in Colorado, then I'll take it here. And I would be surprised then if either of those players left for a different number. Murillo, I think, is different. Teams are going to try and get creative like Cincinnati did with Miles Robinson and try and get in the conversation. I think they probably bring him back as well. But you never know, and you never know what happens. But that's my take on the LAFC guys and where we end up. A few of these guys, as we mentioned, like, we'd be surprised if a Diego Chara left. Maxi Morales, it feels like he's just playing in New York because that's where he wants to be. And there are a few other ones like that would be pretty shocking if they made a move. There's a couple guys that you say, like, your team's going to be better if you pick them up. A Juan, Pedro Santos, if you play with the right type of wingbacks and attacking players. Ariel Lassiter is one of those players as well, where, like, you're not worse off for having him on the roster. You're probably worse off if you're committing a ton of minutes to him and you're saying, like, he's a full-time starter and all of that. Fabian Herbers was already on my underrated list. He's on this list. He's making what, 400,000 right now, and I think a lot of the players I compared him with. Here's an interesting one. On the Legends list, do you think there's a chance that a Johnny Russell says, I want to go try and win something?
That was the first name I was going to say, because like you talked about that. And I was going to ask you this exact question. I was like, do you think that he's in the same convo as like Chara and Maxi? Is that like you just don't see him leaving? For me, I could see it, right? Like, he's a club legend. Like I know I get sentimental and not cold enough for it to be a GM or whatever, right? Like I want to see him stay in Kansas City. But if I was a GM of another team, like, hey, if you can get him at the right number and be like, hey man, like maybe you could start 20 games, but like they're gonna be all the big games. You're gonna sit out the midweek games, like or be good at being a game changer off the bench. Like I think that he would fit on a lot of really good teams as long as he's not going to be really upset to not get 3,000 minutes or 2,800 minutes or something in that realm. And he doesn't strike me as a guy who would go crazy about he seems self-aware enough. He's obviously super self-confident as he goddamn well should be. But like he doesn't strike me as a guy who's going to be an issue if you lay out that like, hey, you're going to play on a better team and you're going to play 2,200 minutes, 2,000 minutes, 1,800, whatever the number is. And like, let's go win something, and you're going to play in our big games. He seems like the kind of guy to be like, hell yeah, like let's do it. And I think that he would make a lot of teams better in that like third, like if you start with 3 forwards, if he's either your third starter or your first guy off the bench, kind of rotating between those spots, like that would be an excellent spot for Johnny Russell.
I would assume you probably have to overpay him to fill that role, and you'd probably be a team that says to yourself, actually, I'm just going to say it, like it's a Vancouver, who's like, this is an overpay for Johnny Russell.
Why? Because of all the Scottish players?
Exactly. This is an overpay for Johnny Russell, but Johnny Russell's quality on 1.2 million is more than, because we're not going to go out and sign a real player from outside the league. And so exactly what you just described, if it's 8-8, but also a threat in the playoffs, like that's maybe enough for them to say, yeah, this is worth the money and this is a chance. Plus, he can hang out with Ryan Gauld and they can drink Scottish sodas and whatever else.
Stuart Armstrong.
Yeah, and Stuart Armstrong, and hang out with the squad. It's one that I would have said for NYCFC a year ago. They signed so many young guys in those
he's
spots.
not 21 and from Uruguay, so no. I don't know what to tell you.
And I don't know that they're in I don't know that they ever get in that win now mode situation. So I don't know if it would happen. I'm going to keep sort of saying all these names with RSL because he's a player where they could be one piece away and he could be a playoff option. And again, how many games is Diego Luna with you next year? Is he with you for the full season? Is this cover? And you set yourself up so that you're not scrambling in the summer and all things like that. SKC fans will be pissed that I just connected him to RSL, and I completely understand that. And the other one would be LAFC, which is if Kike Oliver leaves, if Mateusz Bogusz is halfway out the door, you could see them say, let's cover ourselves here. And if he's not a full-time starter, that's great. And if he is, we know that we trust him and he fits our system and he could be pretty dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, is he friends with Antoine Griezmann? That's the first question I asked that one.
I actually think they go back pretty far. They're boys.
Yeah. Antoine Griezmann, noted big Derby County guy. Yeah, and I feel like that I'm going to use, like you said, some of the similar teams for a couple of these guys that fit. But like a guy like Johnny Russell, like you said, I think you can go to a win now team and he'd make them better. Like Houston, right? Like I could see him with Houston as well. They have, again, when Anali comes back and when Quinones comes back, they have 2 really good young wingers, or at least super exciting young wingers, to bring in another veteran in that attacking group, I think would be really solid. And again, like what they were missing with Quinones and why they went and got Anali is they didn't really have somebody who was just going to eliminate dudes on the dribble and just be kind of dynamic on the back shoulder and can add goals from the wing. That's what Anali was like immediately after signing, before he tore his ACL. And that's what Johnny Russell is too. So like they clearly understand that for our game model to be at its best, we need to have one of those profiles on the field to balance out. Like if Coco Karaskia is playing in that like Mazzala role as like a winger technically, but like a central midfielder that drifts wide, you're going to need a bounce on the other side, somebody who's direct and can take players down the dribble and get behind and score goals. So like Johnny Russell can fit that role as well. So I think he makes sense for Houston. There's a couple other names. Like there's like these free agent classes are getting deeper and deeper, to your point. Like it was last year, I believe, was the first year that they lowered the age restriction and the minimum years. And like again, like should go without saying, but we should keep saying it until it changes. There should be no restrictions on free agency other than is your contract up or not. That's just what it should be. But we're getting closer to that. Some other names: Tim Parker. I think he would make sense for a lot of teams depending on the number. Nick Lima as well. You already said Juan. I'm a little bit worried about Raul Ruiz-Diaz being Joseph Martinez 2.0. That hasn't gone great in Montreal. It didn't go perfect in Miami the year before. I'd be a little bit worried about signing that deal, but like if he's good with being rotational or maybe secondary forward, like that could work. But like I don't know, that would be a big roll of the dice on like again a personality. You don't want the superstar when he's kind of on the downswing. And the reason why these guys are so great is partly because mentally they're super resilient. So I'm sure that Raul Ruiz thinks he's still one of the best forwards in the league.
Yeah.
And that's why he's gotten to the point where he is. But like that would be a dicey one to bring him into a new environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've floated him to Cincinnati and all these other things because, like, if you can put him in the right spot, it works. It hasn't worked with Joseph. They're two different people. You don't want to assume, but they are in very similar profiles. It is not an easy job to manage. No. You're also in a situation where, like, I don't know the contracts these guys take. I will say this, going back on João Paulo, because it kind of connects to this. Because João Paulo is Brazilian, it feels like if the contracts come in low, he's just going to go back to Brazil. There's a ton of money in the game in Brazil. That was part of the reason I didn't put him in here is like, I don't know that he takes the Nico Lodero deal. And Lodero's on 800,000. It's not like it's nothing.
Right.
But I think if that's the offer, he probably looks at it and is like, I could play at Fortaleza. I could play at Botafogo. Like, I can go have these options. Not everyone's like that. Not everyone's in that conversation. I want to touch on my last one here, which I think I put in my top 5, but did not push back on in any way. Jonathan Lewis on $410,000 is, I think, a really interesting player. He has,
I agree.
He has major skills and he has major deficiencies in what he does. The comp that I pulled in for us here was Xande Silva on $560,000 with Atlanta. Jonathan Lewis in the prime of his career. He is a game breaker. With his speed, he is a dangerous player in the final third. He is not the most efficient finisher, and yet he scores goals because he gets in great spots a ton of time. But you don't really want to play through him. So what?
Can you call somebody a game breaker who has 3 goals in his last 50 or 40 appearances?
I would say with his speed, he can affect
1,500 minutes to be fair.
He can affect the game more than someone with those stats does, right? If Jonathan Lewis is on the field, it changes the shape of a back line.
Fair enough.
It changes the reality for everyone. So I would say he's a guy that I would look at pretty similar to what Colorado did with Omir Fernandez of like, yeah, we can guarantee you some minutes that other teams aren't going to guarantee you, and we need these assets in our team. I look at DC United as one of those teams where it's like, can you bring in a guy like this? He's better than Gabriel Pirani at this point already, and he can play north to south. He can play in transition. If you can get him to press with you, which he's doing pretty well with Chris Armas, that's an option for you. That's something that could help you out. So he's one that stood out for me there, and like he's one that I think if he falls in the right spot, we look back and we go like, how was he available for X number? He can outperform whatever he ends up on next, if it's the right place and it's the right situation.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it just comes down to, like, do you believe that there's another step to take? And what is the contract value going to be?
Yeah.
Because that 400,000 and like, you could talk me into it, like, but I just don't think that another step is coming for him. So I don't know necessarily if I do it, but, like, he could be a valuable... Like, it's funny that he's like veteran now. Like I feel like he'll always just be like a rising young talent to me, just for how long it's been and like some of those moments he had. But like, yeah, every team needs a profile like this. Either if he can start some games, he can somebody that can come in off the bench. Like you said, that pace is very valuable in any team, any system, no matter what. Like you're always going to find some minutes for a guy like that. For me, I just don't see that other step coming. And again, maybe that's just about me having the wrong expectations for him. But that's just where I'm at.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it makes sense. I think that's the conversation with a bunch of these guys. Do you think there's a step for a Jackson Ewell, or is he peaked? And if he's peaked, where are you valuing that in Major League Soccer? I think that's the conversation with a few of these guys. And then the rest of the guys are like, what do they have left? And is it enough to make us competitive? Is it enough to be worth it? It's only going to continue to grow. We have a few comments in the chat about San Diego. San Diego is a tough one to pigeonhole here because literally the cutoff is 24 years old, and this is a club built through an academy set up in Right to Dream that's looking to be young, but you do need MLS experience to be competitive. So it would be interesting to see where they land on this list of like who they target and what positions or what quality of player. Like they might not want players who are starters. They might just want the experience and sort of the guidance side and the leadership side in the locker room without having to play them? Or do they go and say to Aaron Long, like, we'll give you the 1.4 deal here. Come and be our starting center back and help stabilize us in year one, still in Southern California. So they're going to be a fun add to the league, and they're going to be interesting to watch as well. All right. That's all for us here. By the way, Josie Altidore is still listed on this free agent list. So the option is still out there and the potential is still there. We will be back on Thursday here live as we will be talking about our underrated 11s. We'll preview the weekend. We'll recap the U.S. and Canadian men's national teams as well. NWSL show coming tomorrow. Thank you to Tom, you for being here. Thank you to me, I guess. And thank you to all of you for listening. We'll talk to you again very, very soon.